Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Entertainment Expansion. We're your host, Tyler Gallahan and Mike Fronte. Mike, how you doing this week?
I'm a little chilly, Tyler. It's spooky season upon us. The weather is changing. It is time to get nice and cozy in our homes, turn out the lights, and watch some horror movies.
And have some pumpkin spice lattes?
I was thinking more Oktoberfest.
Yeah, that's better.
Maybe
Yeah. Okay.
spot in Oktoberfest, pretty good.
Yeah.
Might enjoy that.
Yeah, I think that would be better. So yeah, this is I guess now our third annual Halloween picks. Halloween's coming up in a few days. If you're looking for horror movies to watch, you've come to the right place. Both lighthearted horror movies and just fucked up ones. We got the picks for you. So,
Yes, we
Mike,
do.
if it's all right with you, I'll go first.
Be my guest.
So, first one is a classic, but it still holds up after rewatching it, and it's got a sequel coming out. I'm talking about the original Scream. Yeah,
Ooh,
it's about 20 years old now, actually, and the fifth movie's coming out in a few months. So now's a perfect time as any to start binge watching that series. And the first one, it's still great. It's funny at times. It definitely plays upon the slasher style horror films and make fun of them, but it is also at times a genuine horror film. Like there are some fucked up kills in that movie. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's definitely it's dark comedy throughout it, but then when it needs to get serious, especially toward the end, it does get serious and messed up, and it's a good time. It's got a good cast, so yeah, definitely, I recommend the first one. The later ones, besides four,
Two.
maybe you don't have to watch two and three, but if you're interested, because it looks like
No, you can watch two. Two's not bad.
okay. Because five is
Um,
coming out, it does seem like it's still continuing. So if you're really invested in seeing the fifth one, then yeah, go ahead and watch the rest. But at least for now, watch the first one. You'll have a good time.
Absolutely. Beautiful thing about Scream is it showed up at the end of the slasher era. And Wes Craven truly is a master at his craft
Hmm.
because he made this kind of wokish horror movie where the characters who are actually legitimate characters, which is kind of rare for a horror movie, that you actually are fond of the main characters and enjoy watching their interactions rather than
Just waiting for
you
them to
know
die.
pretty much like a lot of the Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween's where you're like, I don't give a fuck about these characters. Why should I? So it kind of brought it to the real world. Horror movies exist. The horror movie rules exist. In the universe, everything exists, which is done beautifully because even though the rules are outlined and the characters themselves speak to the rules,
Hmm. Yep.
it all comes into play. And this movie was a game changer because right on that front cover, who's on it? Drew Barrymore. At that time, a pretty big star, not at her, I don't know, it might have been towards like her height, I guess, of her
Yeah, I would say
career.
close to it, not at it, but close.
Yeah. And she's the first one to die. And by throwing that at you, it opens the audience to the possibility that no one is safe. Absolutely no one. And you're right, there are some pretty good kills in this, some gruesome kills. That first opening one.
Yeah.
You know, I think the series got less gory as it went on because the first movie started out with, intestines getting fucking ripped out. And then the later ones really didn't have much of that at all. It was simple steps. I think Scream 2 had a pretty good kill in there, but we're talking about the first one here. You have some really enjoyable characters. The whole whodunit thing, it's really a decent mystery the first time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we want to go full spoilers here, Tyler, or
No, let's not go full spoilers because again, these are kind of like picks for people to watch if they're interested, if they need a pick. But just going to what you said about the mystery and who done it, I think another positive at this movie is besides developing a new iconic horror character in Ghostface, that at least this iteration of Ghostface was well done. There was
yeah,
no bullshit, plot devices or lazy writing. Like as the movie went on, you kept wondering, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And at the end, when they explain it, it makes sense.
Absolutely. Also, great, pretty good technology for the times for, some of the practical effects that they used.
Mhm.
But then again, practical effects and horror kind of go hand in hand. If the movie's practical effects are good, the horror movie itself will probably be pretty decent. It kind of makes or breaks a horror movie. It's only as good as its kills, especially with most of them. People mostly watch horror movies for the kills. This one's got it, plus a great story. If you somehow haven't seen Scream, I really think you should.
So what do you got for a recommendation, Mike?
Well, since we're going a little bit on the old school here, I might join you. Not quite as old, but same, but different. I'm talking about The Strangers. This movie is so tense. You could cut it with a rubber butter knife. When this movie really kicks off, it's something about the stillness and the silence of it really plays off. I mean, little quick synopsis if you haven't seen it. Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman just returned from a wedding. Spoiler here, he proposed to her. She said no. So they're dealing with that emotional tension there as well. And then they get a knock on the door at 4 a.m. Some girl they can't see because the light's out. And soon enough, they start getting terrorized by 3 people. And it's just them alone in this house, which is somehow semi-remote. I don't really know how true that is when you look at some of the wide shots, but relatively remote house, and they're kind of it's I don't want to say a cat and mouse game. It's because it's the cat and a mouse if the cats are literally just fucking with them the whole time, because
So
their whole
it's
job,
like Tom and Jerry if Tom was actually good at this job.
and very sadistic,
Okay.
because they can enter the house any point they want. They do, and it's literally they want to kill them whenever they feel like it. It's more of the psychological game of how long can we make you crack for before you finally beg for death. And like I said, the tension is on point in this movie. There's genuine good jump scares, not like, ridiculous jump scares. The movie's not full of those. But once again, outstanding performances, great acting, great writing. I wouldn't go into this one for the kills because it mainly follows just 2 main characters and the 3 killers, and that's about it.
Okay. Solid pick. For my final pick, since we were doing a bit old school on the movies, I'm bringing it back to modern day with Ready or Not. It's a different horror movie. Kind of in the same vein as Scream, kind of dark comedy, some actual genuine horror elements. But long story short, you have this bride gets married to wonderful or seemingly wonderful husband.
Well,
It turns out his family is kind of messed up, and they have to play a game. So overnight, they try to literally hunt her down and use her for a ritual. And they say they don't mean to, but if they don't sacrifice her to I believe it's their grandfather, they're all going to die in the morning. So it's kind of a race against the clock. And it was pretty good. The cast, while no major stars in the movie, was very much entertaining. All the characters were great. There were some funny moments. There were some really messed up moments. But yeah, definitely. I don't want to say too much more because it does subvert your expectations a bit. Like you think you know where the movie's kind of gonna go, but toward the end you don't know where it's gonna go. So
yeah, and it's hard to kind of talk about this movie without really spoiling
yeah.
anything. I mean, there's definitely some good kills.
hmm
I guess the acting's okay.
But the acting was good. Again, like the fact that there's no big name stars tied to this. It is a smaller kind of budget horror film.
Yeah, I think the
I thought-
biggest star was Samara Weaving, who's coming right off of The Babysitter.
Yeah, the
Another
bride herself.
But yeah, that movie I would 100% say it's pretty much a gore fest.
Yeah, it gets gory.
And it's very very fast too. One could say in a matter of seconds. I'll save my thoughts on that for when we do our recommendations. So I'm gonna jump right into my final pick, if that's all right with you.
That's fine with me.
So we are bringing it closer to modern day, a horror movie that was straight to Netflix, but one of those absolute fucking gems from, gonna say it, the up and coming horror director icon, Mike Flanagan. Most people know his more modern work of The Haunting of Hill House. Great show. If you haven't seen that, you should probably check it out. But we're not here talking about shows. I'm talking about his first big feature horror movie, which is Hush. Takes place once again a remote house, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's another cat and mouse game, except it's just 1v1. Killer versus the main female lead. But wait, there's more. A little screen reference for you. The main protagonist, she is deaf. So the movie goes back and forth between her hearing perspective and the actual audio. So there's times in the movie where the killer may be moving about and you don't hear it because you're hearing what she hears. So in theory, he could be walking right behind her. And if as long as he's not stomping his feet, causing too much vibrations, she has no idea where he is. So it definitely shakes things up while keeping it interesting. Another movie that has great tension throughout it, genuinely keeps you kind of unnerved and on the edge of your seat while you're watching it, especially for the first time. Does have some decent gore in it. I wouldn't say gore, but but on the scale of like kind of body horror type ish, broken limbs, shit like that.
Like the general gore stuff you would get in a typical horror movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
because once again, funny enough, I'm not talking about any movies that are big body counts here.
Yeah, it's very small, personal, groups.
But
Yeah.
sometimes that's the best horror. Gives you a little bit more tension when you're watching it.
I think so. I mean, if you have a horror movie with, let's say typical slasher film, high school party, there's 15, 20 there, over half of them are dead before
Yep.
halfway the movie's done. So you don't care. You expect half of them to die anyway. So yeah, you're right. Because I think you brought up a good point. Is like with the smaller groups, you have more time to do some character development, like you had in Scream, and you know, you care more about the characters. And when you care more about the characters, when the situations arise, you're more frightened by what might happen.
Correct, because it gives you that general uneasy sense. It kind of puts you in their shoes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more of a intimate viewer experience.
Like how we didn't care how anyone died in Halloween Kills, for example.
Yeah, pretty much, because that
Yeah.
movie was just
They tried to make us care about Tommy. I did not care about Tommy.
no one did. But you know who you will care about? All the characters we talked about tonight, because
Yeah.
they all are likable characters and can really resonate with you. And I think that's what makes a movie good, especially in the horror genre. If you can resonate with the character, it just makes it that much better and more believable.
So I think that's all we got for our picks. I think it's a solid list.
I would agree. Now, Tyler,
Mm-hmm.
let's go through some quick recommendations. We only got 4 to go through. Let's start with Scream. Would you recommend Scream? Yes or no? And I don't think we really got to go into the why because we both know the answer to this.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we just kicked off the podcast for like 5 minutes explaining why Scream is so good. So yeah, it's an easy recommendation for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on that one.
Ready or not? Obviously, it's a yes for me.
I'm gonna say it's a no for me.
No, okay.
Just because when we talk about strong characters, this movie's got one.
Okay.
The rest of the cast is just kind of annoying. I get it might be the point of it, but in the same turn, the movie just didn't really do it for me. It was a little too comedic for my taste for what it could have been. I mean, they had a great premise.
But you
It
feel they
just
didn't
didn't really-
execute it as well as they could have.
Agreed. That's
Okay.
precisely my thoughts. Strangers, Tyler.
Well, I got to be honest here to the listeners. For both your picks, I personally have not watched them. So for your two picks, I will abstain from voting on recommending or not based on your taste on horror movies. I would say listeners should follow your recommendations if those movies piqued their interest.
Oh hell, I can't believe you haven't seen The Strangers.
I have not seen The Strangers. Now, I assume after me saying all that, you're not going to make the weird move of you not recommending one of your own picks.
No, I'm gonna recommend both of them
Okay.
highly. Fucking higher than Tommy Chong. That's how high I'll recommend both those movies. I'm just slightly baffled here. You stumped me. But that's enough about what we think about these movies. What we want to know is, what are some of your favorite horror movies? And do you agree with some of our picks? If not, as always, feel free to let us know on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Find us at Entertainment Expansion. As always, thank you for listening. Have a happy Halloween.